Let the other join, then we will start. Before that, we will see what was, because there was a Ganpati holiday, so we did not have any lectures. So we were discussing about consideration and on agreements against public policy. Correct? We were on, I think, agreements for sale of public offices. So we will wait for 1 or 2 minutes, then we will start. Let the others join till now. Till then, let them join. So let us start now. Agreement. Next type of agreement which is against public policy is agreement in restraint of marriage. Restraint is what? Restriction. So any agreement which is coming in the way of any person's right to marry, that agreement is void to that extent. On completion of 21 years of age, a male gets a right to marry, and on completion of 18 years of age, the female gets a right to marry. So if there is any agreement which is coming in between their rights to marry, then that agreement is void. They may marry a person male or female, as the case may be, as per their choice. If the qualifying age is there with them, no restriction can be put on their right to marry. Correct? Next is agreement in restraint of trade. So every person has a right to carry on any lawful trade, business, occupation, or profession. If any agreement is there which is coming in between his right, then that agreement is void. Please mind the words. Any person can carry on any lawful trade, any lawful business, any lawful profession, any lawful occupation. So the requirement of law is the profession, business, or occupation has to be lawful. If it is unlawful, then yes, restriction can be put on them. But if it is a lawful profession, lawful business, lawful occupation, then there cannot be any restraint on that trade or business or profession or occupation. Okay? What do you mean by trade? Any lawful business, profession, or occupation. Now there are exceptions to this rule, that agreement in restraint of trade. The partners, I'll tell you one of the exceptions. The partner cannot carry on identical business or similar business as that of firm, or retiring partner may be restricted from carrying on similar business that of firm. So actually speaking, this is an agreement in restraint of trade. But if you think it in a proper way, you will understand that this agreement in restraint of trade is to be treated as valid. Suppose you and me are partners in a partnership firm, we are doing a business. And I start the same business in the next shop where we have the office. In the shop, I start the fresh business in my own name in the next shop. So here I am sharing, say 50-50% profit. So here I am sharing 50%, you are sharing 50%. There I will share 100%. So there I am the only person who is carrying on that business. This business is same as that of firm. Business is same as that of firm. Now, if I am allowed to carry on that business, which is that of the firm, which is similar to that of the firm, I will concentrate more on that individual business. In addition to that, I can turn the existing clients of the firm towards my business. You are following me? So in order to stop all these things, there can be restriction on both of us that we will not carry on any similar business like the firm. Another eventuality, retiring partner is carrying on the business, same business as that of the firm in the same area. So that retiring partner can be restricted from carrying on the business, similar business of that of firm in the same locality, for the simple reason that all the clients or all the relations of the firm may not be knowing that that partner has retired from the firm. So that partner who has retired can snatch away the existing customers or existing clients of the firm if he is allowed to start the business in the same locality. So for this reason, he can be restricted from carrying on similar business of that of the firm in the same locality after retirement. Okay. So this is with respect to agreement in restraint of trade. Next point is agreement in restraint of legal proceedings. Legal proceeding means what? Any court case can be called as legal proceeding. Any court case can be called as legal proceedings. Correct? So agreements in restraint of legal proceedings. So any agreement which is restricting a person's right to file a case or a suit in the court of law, that agreement is void. Okay. Next point, agreement to defraud the creditors. Defraud means what? Play fraud upon the creditors. So that agreement again is void. Agreement to defraud third parties. Defraud means what? To play a fraud upon. Now in point 10, the fraud is to be played upon the creditors. In point 11, the fraud is to be played upon the third parties. Correct? Point 12, agreement to create monopoly. What is monopoly? Please mute yourself. Who is speaking? Some voice is coming. Monopoly means what? Single seller and so many buyers. So that single seller can dictate the terms. He can sell the product at what price he wants to sell, whatever the price may be. Correct? So higher price will be charged by that person who is the only seller in the market. That is called as monopoly. Correct? So by entering into agreements, if a person wants to become a monopolist, those agreements are against public policy and they are void. Correct? Next, agreement for waiver of illegality. Waiver means giving up, छोड़ देना. Illegality, give up किया, छोड़ दिया. Then that is called as agreement for waiver of illegality. So this agreement is against public policy. Next, agreements between lawyer and client for fees according to success in the matter. Interesting point. Agreement between lawyer and client. Who is client? Who has filed a case. And who is lawyer? The lawyer is a advocate or legal practitioner who has filed a case for the client and who is fighting the case for the client. Correct? Now what is the agreement? Agreement is for charging the fees according to success in the matter. So if I succeed in your matter, if I get a success in your case, you will have to pay me this much amount. That is the agreement by the lawyer with his client. Now, if this type of agreement is there, the lawyer will do each and everything to give victory to his client's case or to give victory to the client. Is it not? So he may apply illegal things or he may do some illegal things to get victory to the client. He may apply or he may play upon certain things which are illegal, which are not allowed, to give victory to his client. So this should not happen. That's why the fees are not to be decided according to the success in the case. And if such agreement is there between the lawyer and client that the fees are to be paid according to the success in the case or the matter, then that agreement is void, being against public policy. Okay. Next point, marriage brokerage contracts. Marriage brokerage. How the marriages are decided? One is love marriage and second is arranged marriage. In arranged marriage also, certain people are involved. In love marriage, friends may be involved. At the time of deciding the marriage, at the time of affair, the friends may be involved. And at the time of fixing an arranged marriage, the relatives are involved. Correct? From some known person in the locality or from some known person in the caste, a message is spread that our daughter is of the age of marriage or our son is of the age of marriage. So please find any suitable male or husband or girl, or you can call it as bride or bridegroom. Correct? So please find a suitable match for our daughter or for our son. So in the locality or in the caste or in the society, the persons known to us bring a suitable match and thereafter the marriages happen. Now, if they start charging for it, it will be a marriage brokerage and it will be called as dalali, dalal for marriages. Now, it sounds odd, no? It gives some different color to the entire system of marriage. You can understand what I'm trying to tell you. I don't want to go into more details on this point. It will become vulgar then. Huh? So you are trying to get me what I'm trying to tell you. So those persons who are there who fix the marriage, they don't charge for the brokerage like you purchase a property. There are there are estate brokers. When you are purchasing shares, etc., there are stock brokers. So like that, there are no marriage brokers. Vadhuvar Suchak, that's a different thing. You are paying the fees to them, not as a brokerage. Okay? Not as a brokerage, but you are paying the fees to them for registration and for searching the suitable male or female for marriage. So they will provide you the list along with photographs or their forms filled in, duly filled in with them. So they give you the facility for searching. No, for that purpose they charge you. That is not a marriage brokerage, correct? So try to understand the difference between brokerage and the fees charged by marriage bureaus. Okay? So if a person charges brokerage for marriage, it will be called as dalali. So dalali means what you know, the pious relation or good relation will be termed differently, may be termed differently. So try to understand what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, so marriage brokerage contracts are void, being against public policy. Correct. Next is agreements made for partly unlawful consideration and object. Partly unlawful. Part of the unlawful consideration is unlawful, part of the consideration is lawful. So if the part can be separated, lawful can be separated from the unlawful, then the unlawful part is void and lawful part is valid. If it cannot be separated, the entire agreement is void. I must have told you this example. If you have an apple, 30% of the apple is rotten. You cut it apart with the help of a knife and you eat the remaining 70%, no? But if the 70% of the apple is rotten, then and you cannot separate the 30% part out of it, you throw the entire apple. In the same way, if the lawful part cannot be separated from the unlawful part, the entire agreement becomes void. And if the lawful part can be separated from the unlawful part, the lawful part is valid and unlawful part is void. Correct? Agreements in restraint. Next point. Agreement in restraint of personal liberty. Agreements in restraint of personal liberty. Personal liberty means what? Liberty. Liberty is what? Swatantriya. So agreement in restraint of personal liberty is also void. Correct? Just a minute now. Let me see which PPT is to be shared now before you, because this is over. One part is remaining. Where it is, I am not finding it. Just a minute. Give me some time. Agreement by way of waiver we have not discussed. Where it is discussed, I don't know. That is, I think, in void agreements we have discussed. Just let me check. So now I will stop share of this PPT. This is over. Now we will move on to the next presentation. Next chapter which we discussed is capacity to contract. Now try to understand, we are now dealing with the enforceability law by law, which is the second part of the definition of contract. Contract. What is the meaning? What is the definition of contract? Agreement enforceable by law is a contract. Correct, no? Agreement which is enforceable by law is a contract. So enforceability by law means what? That we have started discussing. We discussed about consideration. If there is no consideration, the agreement will be void. Now here we come to the next chapter, which talks about capacity to contract. So if the person contracting does not have the capacity to contract, the agreement does not become enforceable by law and the agreement becomes void. Correct? So let us see what is capacity to contract. So keep it in mind that if the person does not have the capacity to contract, the agreement becomes void. So the agreement is not enforceable by law. So the agreement will not become a contract. Correct? Next, what is capacity to contract? Section 11. Every person is competent to contract who is of the age of majority according to the law to which he is subject. So according to the law which is applicable to him, that person, the law which is applicable to him, according to that law, he is of the age of majority, correct? And who is of sound mind and is not disqualified from contracting by any law to which he is subject. Correct? So this definition starts with the words every person. So every person is competent to contract. So every person under the sun is competent to contract. Then it gives qualifications further. Who is of the age of majority and who is of sound mind and is not disqualified from contracting. The word or is not used. That is very interesting, no? Please try to understand. Had the word or been used, the meaning would have been different. Let us read it in that way. Every person is competent to contract who is of the age of majority or who is of sound mind or is not disqualified from contracting. So had the word or been used, the meaning of the sentence would have been different. Or means option, is it not? So either majority or soundness of mind or not disqualified. So either of these three, if it is there with a person, that person is competent to contract. But instead of the word or, the word and is used. So all the three things must be there with a person in order to make him competent to contract. Correct? And likha hai, every person is competent to contract. Who is of the age of majority and who is of sound mind and who is not disqualified from contracting. So person must be of the age of majority and he must be of sound mind and he is not disqualified from contracting. So these three things, all the three things must be there with the person, or a person must possess all the three qualifications, then he is competent to contract. So every person who is possessing these qualifications can enter into a valid contract and have the capacity to contract. Is this point clear? If no, please tell me. Let us go to the next. Before that, when we say that we are studying the chapter of capacity to contract, we will have to study who are competent to contract and who are not competent to contract. So, who are competent to contract? A person who is of the age of majority, and a person who is of sound mind, and a person who is not disqualified from contracting. So, a person who is major can enter into a contract. But what about minor? A person who is of sound mind can enter into a contract. But what about a person of unsound mind and a person not disqualified from contracting can enter into a contract? Then who are the persons who are disqualified to enter into a contract? These aspects are to be understood in this chapter. So while dealing with or while understanding the chapter of capacity to contract, we have to understand about the minority, about the unsoundness of mind, and about the disqualified or disqualifications for contracting. Correct? So we have to look into it one by one. So the heading is now agreements by minors. Now please read the first paragraph. Have you read it? According to section 3 of Indian Majority Act 1875, a person becomes major on completion of 18 years of age. How many years are to be completed of the age? 18 years. Please mind the word completion, not running. I'm running 18. Yes, a person 18 age has allowed to contract. Yes, correct. But completion of 18 years, that you have to remember. I am 17, my age is 17 years and 11 months. I am not major. My age is 17 months, 17 years, 11 months and 29 days. I am not major. 30 days, I am not major. 11, after completion of 11, after completion of 12 months, on the next day, my age is complete 18 years. So day of the birthday, on that day, 18th birthday, I have completed the age of 18 years. So that will also vary to be discussed in strict sense if you see to it. At what time you have taken the birth and all those things will come in play. But on the next day, definitely you have completed the age of 18 years. So your 18 years birthday, the next day would be the day on which you have definitely completed the age of 18 years. So you are major. So now you are in SYBCom, so your age should be 19. So all of you are major. Correct, no? But which act says about it? Indian Majority Act. Which section? Section 3. What it says? A person becomes major on completion of 18 years of age. Till then, he is minor. However, this is important now. However, a minor shall not become a major under the Act unless he has completed 21 years of age. So this thing is new. Ahead we have said that completion of 18 years. Now we are saying 21 years. There are two circumstances under which a minor completes the majority or minor attains the majority on completion of 21 years of age. Which are they? One, the court has appointed a guardian to the person or property of a minor. Now, guardian means kon? Palak, who will take care of that minor. Father is the natural guardian of a child, and in his absence, mother is the natural guardian. So if that child's father and mother are no more, because we cannot say that the child does not have the father and mother. It is not possible. No, because without father mother, the child would not have come into existence. So if the father and mother of that child are no more, and the court has appointed guardian. Guardian means a person to take care of the minor. To a person or property of that minor before he has attained the age of 18 years. So if that is the case, in that event, he will complete the age of majority on completion of 21 years of age. How many years? 21 years of age. Correct? Which is the second circumstance under which the minority will be attained by the majority will be attained by the minor on completion of 21 years of age. A court of wards has assumed superintendence over the minor's property. Assumed superintendence means having control, you can say. Superintendence is looking after or having a control over the minor's property. Which court? Court of wards. There is an act called as Guardians and Wards Act, WARDS, Wards Act. Under that act, there can be a control of the court on the minor's property. So if that is so, the person will become major on completion of 21 years of age. So in normal circumstance, the age of majority will be attained on completion of 18 years of age, correct? But in these two circumstances, the majority will be attained on completion of 21 years of age. Is this point clear to you? Please read this again. Have you read this? Then we'll go to the next slide. Law relating to minors agreement. Law relating to minors agreement. Point 1. Minors agreement is void ab initio. You people know what is the meaning of the word void. Then what is this ab initio? Ab initio means from the beginning. From the start itself, the agreement is void. So starting point of the agreement, from that starting point itself, the agreement becomes void. Correct? This was held in one famous case. The name of the case is Mohri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. Mohri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. Now, what were the facts of this case? You have to remember it because there can be a multiple choice question on this. In which case it was decided that minors agreement is void ab initio. There may be a question. Correct? So this is one of the multiple choice questions which may be asked to you. Correct, no? So Mohri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh, in which case it was held that the minors agreement is void ab initio, that is void from the beginning. Okay, let us go further. What are the facts of the case? A minor was there who executed a mortgage. What did he do? He executed a mortgage. Mortgage means what? By keeping some property with another person, he will take money. So mortgage is something like pledge, but mortgage is for immovable property and pledge is for movable property. So mortgage means sort of गिरवी रखना, ठीक है ना? But गिरवी रखना is the term which is normally used in case of pledge, where the property which is movable is kept with the third person and money is taken on the basis of that property. So that property is kept as a security for repayment of the debt. But here, in case of mortgage, the property is immovable property. So immovable property cannot be handed over actually to the third person from whom the loan is taken. But the documents of the immovable property are given to the third person from whom the loan is taken. Correct? So mortgage is possible in case of immovable property. So this minor executed a mortgage. Executed means entered into or signed an agreement for mortgage. So that minor will mortgage some property with the third person and take a loan. The mortgage the property, the minor mortgaged the property for rupees 20,000. What was the amount? Rupees 20,000. So when the property is mortgaged, the mortgager, that means the person who is mortgaging the property, will be called as mortgager, and the person with whom the property is mortgaged will be called as mortgagee. So that mortgagee, when the property is mortgaged to him, will give the loan amount to the mortgager, no? Correct, no? Pledge, what happens in pledge? You keep a watch with the saukar and you take 500 rupees. In the same way, you are keeping some property with the mortgagee and taking a loan. So what was the total loan in this transaction? 20,000. So property was mortgaged by a minor, and the mortgagee, that is the person with whom the property was mortgaged, paid the amount of rupees 8,000 to the minor. So part payment of loan was made, or rather disbursed. Part of the loan was disbursed, correct, to the minor. So minor received that 8,000, correct. Thereafter, the minor told the mortgagee for cancellation of the mortgage or setting aside of the mortgage. The meaning of the word cancellation and setting aside is same. So the minor asked for setting aside the mortgage, that is cancellation of the mortgage. Now what will be the natural consequence? What will be the natural consequence? Mortgagee will say, okay, let us cancel the mortgage. Give me back my rupees 8,000. Is it not? This will be the natural consequence, no? Just a minute. Huh? So the natural consequence will be when the minor says that let us cancel the mortgage, the mortgagee will say that I have paid you already rupees 8,000. You refund that rupees 8,000 to me and take back your property. Correct, no? The minor refused to return the amount of rupees 8,000. The matter went to the court of law. The court there held that, court decided in this fashion that the minor's agreement is void from the beginning, and any benefit received by the minor will not return the benefit. Minor will not return the benefit. This is the law. So minor, whatever benefit is received by the minor in the agreement, that benefit will be kept by the minor and he will not return the benefit. Correct, no? So who is at loss now? The mortgagee is at loss. The mortgagee is at loss. Correct? So from this point only, the second points come in play. What is the second point? A minor can be a promisee or beneficiary. Even though agreement with a minor is void, minor will not be the sufferer. Whatever benefit the minor is getting from the agreement, minor will keep it. So minor can be beneficiary. Like in the case of Mori Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. Minor has received the amount of rupees 8,000. Now it is not compulsory for a minor to return the amount. Agreement is void, but the benefit which is received by the minor can be kept by the minor. So minor is the beneficiary. That is the point number 2. Minor can be a promisee or beneficiary. So have you understood this example, the point number 1 given in point number 1 and the point number 2? If yes, then we'll go further. So let us go to the next point, or what we can do is it's 8:47. We'll take 12 minutes break. Correct. So next lecture will start at 9 o'clock sharp. So we'll take a break of 10 minutes. You can go and come back within 10 minutes. Okay. So we are stopping the lecture here. Don't disconnect the meeting. It will continue. Correct. Don't disconnect the meeting. It will continue. We will meet sharp at 9 o'clock. Is it okay? It's 8:48 now. We'll meet sharp at 9 o'clock. Are you back from the break? Yes. Are you back from the break? We'll wait for some time. Okay. We'll still wait for some time. Let the others join there. Now, students' feedback was asked from you on the syllabus. Now, the link was sent to you long back, but there was very confusing response on that. Students' feedback. Now, see, I will send the link to you again. See, the thing was like this: full name of the student, what were the contents of the Google form, full name of the student, roll number or GR number, class, SYBCom, email ID, contact number, subject is business law. Now, first question was, how do you rate the curriculum or syllabus? Excellent, very good, good, fair or poor. So you have to give your response. What is your opinion about reading material or curriculum subject are sufficient? You have to give your response. Is the subject relevant to you, to your job and your future aspirations? Your response is required on this. Do you think the subject course helps in developing students' personality? So that is the next question. How do you rate the paper pattern and exam evaluation system? And the next question is, what are the changes you want to suggest for improving the curriculum? So what are the changes you want? Syllabus is to be revised, new laws are to be implemented, new laws are to be added, or particular law is to be removed, or project work is to be added. Something of that sort you have to write, no? Correct. So question number 6 is concerned, as far as question number 6 is concerned, what your answer should be, what are the changes you want to suggest for improving the curriculum, for improvement? Project on law, correct? Project on law or addition of the new acts, addition of the new mercantile acts, or revision of the entire syllabus, or syllabus is very effective, or syllabus is very vast, or syllabus is very short. Something of this sort shall be your suggestion. Because the question is, what are the changes you want to suggest for improving the curriculum? So changes for improving. This is to be sent to the University of Mumbai. So your suggestions are required. And point number 7 is, question number 7 is, comment any suggestion. So any suggestion if you have, or any comment you have, that you have to write. कि बाबा project work include करो, और viva voce तोंडी परीक्षा viva voce introduce करो. Correct. So something of that sort you have to write there. Okay, so I am sharing the link with you. Those who have filled it up, don't fill it again. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Within that 5 minutes, you have to fill it up. Okay. I'm sharing the link of that. to you in the chat box. This link is of what? This link is of feedback of SWABICOM students for curriculum or syllabus 21-22. So since you know now what is the syllabus, you have to send the responses. So please give your suggestion what should be there, whether there should be a project, or there should be a viva, or there should be a revision, or there should be addition of commercial laws, other commercial laws in the syllabus to improve the curriculum. That you have to write, no? You have not written any suggestions like that. So please write any suggestions to this effect. That will be helpful for the university to revise the syllabus, no? So it is okay. I have not thought about it just now. This should not be your response to those questions, no? So please think in a way that you have to write the response to question number 6 and question number 7 properly. Question number 6 talks about what are the changes you want to suggest for improving the curriculum. So have you submitted that? Let me know so that I can start with the lecture. So let us start now. So let us start now. We were on point number 3. Minor's property is liable for necessaries. In the above 2 points, we discussed that minor's agreement is void ab initio. From the beginning, the agreement is void. And the benefit which is received by the minor will keep that benefit. These 2 points we discussed in the earlier lecture. Correct, no? The third point talks about minor's property is liable for necessaries. Property is liable for necessaries supplied to the minor. Necessaries supplied to the minor. Now, this point is one of the points in your quasi contract also. One of the points in your quasi contract also that you have already studied. A person who is supplying a minor the necessaries suitable to the minor's life. What may be those necessaries suitable to the minor's life? Food, shelter, clothing, they are basic necessaries. Correct? Food, shelter, clothing, they are basic necessaries. Then school uniform, school books, school bag, water bottle, school fees, and so many other things which are connected with a minor for his day-to-day life. These can be the necessaries suitable for his life. Correct, no? So if a person supplies these necessaries to a minor, he has a right of reimbursement from the property of the minor. So for example, if the amount X is spent by a person for supplying necessaries to the minor, that amount X can be refunded from the property of the minor and not minor personally. Correct? So even though the agreement with minor is void, this person's intention of helping the minor is very good and noble intention. So that is why such person will receive the amount as a refund which he has spent for the necessaries of a minor. Next is right to hold property or interest. That is the, give me a moment. Third point number 5, no estoppel against minor. So earlier point is what, right to hold property or interest. The minor has a right to hold property or interest. Correct? Next point is no estoppel against minor. Estoppel means what? Once you take a stand, you cannot change that stand. Once you take a stand, you cannot change that stand. So if you represent to somebody and take a stand, so you cannot change the stand thereafter. So if I represent to you that I am the principal of the college, no doubt I am a teacher of the college, teacher in the college, but if I represent to you that I am the principal of the college, then I cannot go back from my stand. I will be responsible like a principal. Correct? If a person represents that he is a partner in a particular firm, thereafter he cannot change that stand. In a way, if a minor represents that he is major, can he change the stand? That is the question. So this principle that no stand can be changed afterwards is called as principle of estoppel. A person once take a stand cannot change it. That is the principle. Correct? So this principle is not applicable to minor. So if suppose minor represents to another that I am a major person and I can enter into a contract, then in that event, a minor cannot change the stand. It is not like that. I will explain it to you in different way. Suppose if a minor tells that I am a major and enters into an agreement. As per normal rule, he should be held responsible as major. But the agreement was entered into during his minority. So that agreement is void from the beginning itself. So this rule of estoppel cannot be made applicable to a minor. Okay. Next, no subsequent ratification of minor's agreement. Subsequent ratification. What do you mean by ratification? To approve afterwards. To approve afterwards. Ratification means to approve afterwards. Okay. The age of a person is 17 years and 9 months. So there are only 3 months for him to become major. Correct? There are only 3 months for him to become major. So what he thinks, let us enter into an agreement just now. Let us enter into an agreement just now. And on becoming major, I will approve it. So on becoming major, I will ratify the agreement. The law says no. Law again goes back to point number 1. Minor's agreement is void ab initio from the beginning. Correct? When he entered into an agreement at the age of 17 years and 9 months, at that point of time itself, the agreement has become void. So after 3 months, that is on completion of 18 years, there is nothing to ratify. Ratify cannot be done. Ratification cannot be done because there is nothing to ratify when he becomes major, because the agreement has already become void at the starting point when it was entered into. When it was entered into. Correct? So there can be no subsequent ratification of minor's agreement. Next point is no insolvency against minor. When you call it a person is an insolvent, when you call a person as insolvent, when his liabilities are more than his assets. So a person is declared as insolvent when his liabilities are more than his assets. Please listen carefully. When his liabilities are more than his assets. So we are going to the balance sheet. So from selling entire assets, the liability cannot be paid. By selling entire assets, the liabilities cannot be paid. So the liabilities are more than the assets. So that person is insolvent. So his property will be taken charge by the official receiver or official assignee, and that official receiver will distribute the assets in proportion to all liabilities. Correct, no? But to bring the liability in existence, there has to be a contract. Without entering into a contract, the liability cannot arise. Minor does not have the capacity to contract, so minor will not have liabilities. So liability of a minor will be zero. And asset means what? Asset means something in plus, no? So zero cannot be more than something in plus. Zero cannot be more than something in plus. So therefore, there will be no liabilities for a minor. So if there are no liabilities for a minor, the liabilities will be zero, and zero cannot be more than assets. So asset means something is with the minor, no? So it is in plus. So zero cannot be more than the plus. Therefore, there will be no liabilities. And if the liabilities are more than assets, then only a person can be declared as insolvent. But since there are no liabilities, minor cannot be declared as insolvent. Is this point clear? Let us go to the next one. No specific performance of minor's agreement. We have discussed what is specific performance. The court orders the other party, the party in breach, to specifically perform his part of contract. I had given you the example of construction of a building. I am the builder, you are the landlord. I took the property from you for reconstruction. The building is to be structured as 20 floors, 20 floored building. Correct? I complete 16 floors and I stop work. So I have breached the contract. So you can go to the court of law. You can ask for damages. Or I can tell the court that I will pay the compensation to you, that is damages for loss. But you are not interested in that. You will tell me, or you will tell the court, sir, this person has constructed 16 floors. Only part of the work is remaining. Ask him to specifically perform his part of contract. So ask him to complete his work. So that is called as specific performance. Now, this rule of specific performance is not applicable to minor. This rule of specific performance is not applicable to minor. Why? Minor agreement is void from the beginning. Minor's agreement is void from the beginning. Now, if specific performance is allowed, the court is allowing a void agreement to continue. Please concentrate here. This is very important. If specific performance is allowed, court is allowing void agreement to continue, because minor's agreement is void from the beginning. So from the starting itself, the agreement is void. Now, if the specific performance is allowed, if the minor is told you complete your performance, so it amounts to allowing performance or specific performance of the agreement which is void from the beginning. So that will be improper. So therefore, there cannot be a specific performance of a minor's agreement. Correct? Next point. The minor cannot be a member of registered company. To become a member of registered company, you have to apply. The company has to accept your proposal and there will be a contract. Correct? So to be a member of a registered company is a contract, and minor does not have the capacity to enter into a contract. Therefore, a minor cannot be a member of registered company. A contract by guardian on behalf of minor is enforceable. Guardian. A contract by guardian on behalf of minor is enforceable. Next point. A minor may be admitted to the benefits of the partnership with the consent of all partners. Admitted to the benefits. Benefits admitted. So minor can be admitted to the benefits of the partnership with the consent of all partners. For what he will be admitted? To the benefits, not for losses. Minor will not share the losses. Minor will share only the profits. This takes back us to the point number 2. A minor can be promisee or beneficiary. So wherever there is a benefit to the minor will take it. So this point talks about the same thing, no? A minor can be admitted to the benefits of partnership with the consent of all partners. So what is required? Consent of all partners, not only few partners, not only one partner, not only two partners, but consent of all the partners is required for admitting the minor to the benefits of the partnership. Correct? Next, liability of a person standing as surety for a minor is equal to that of minor. Again, interesting point. Liability of a person standing surety for a minor is equal to that of minor. Surety. This is a contract of guarantee. This point is connected with the contract of guarantee. Just a minute. This point is connected with contract of guarantee. Now you remember or you know that in case of contract of guarantee, there are three parties. Let us understand the contract of guarantee. You go to the bank for loan. You go to the bank for loan. Bank will ask for guarantor. So that guarantor will give the guarantee that you, if you fail to pay the amount of loan taken, the guarantor will repay the loan. So that guarantor is also called as surety, who takes the guarantee of repayment of the loan in case of your default. In case of your default. So you become the principal debtor, the bank is the creditor, and the third person giving guarantee is the guarantor or surety. Correct? Is it correct? Now, if you are minor, first of all, the bank will not grant you the loan. That is the reason why your PAN card and your date of birth proof is asked, no? To ensure that you are not a minor. Correct? So if you are a minor and you take a loan of rupees 50,000 from the bank, and I am standing as a surety for you. I am standing as a surety for you or guarantor for you. You will receive the loan as per point number 2. You will keep the benefit and you will not repay the loan. The bank will come to me because I have given the guarantee to the bank that if suppose you do not pay, I will pay. In that situation now, if you fail to pay, the bank will come to me. Now, actually, what is your liability? 50,000? No, your liability is 0 because minors agreement is void ab initio. So your liability is 0 and my liability is equal to your liability. So what is your liability? 0. So my liability will be 0. So to avoid all these things, bank asks for birth date proof while doing any transactions. You cannot open an account unless you are a major. So you have to open an, if you want to have open an account, you must be a major person. So you have to have a majority with you, then only you can enter into a contract by entering into a contract of opening an account. So what you have to keep in mind, liability of a person standing surety for a minor is equal to that of minor. So if the liability of a minor becomes 0 because the agreement with the minor is void, the liability of the surety is equal to that of minor. So liability of the surety is also 0. And the last point is minor can act as an agent. Minor can work as an agent. So that is all with respect to minors agreement. If you have any doubts, please ask me. Shall we go further? Okay, if you have no doubts in minors agreement, let us go further. Agreement by persons of unsound mind. What is the first sentence? Agreement by persons of unsound mind is void. Agreement by persons of unsound mind is void. So, if a person is of unsound mind and if he enters into an agreement, the agreement will be void. What is unsound mind? A person is said to be of sound mind. Sorry, what you have written? What is sound mind? Okay, not unsound mind. What is sound mind? A person is said to be of sound mind for the purpose of making a contract. So here what we require is soundness of mind for the purpose of making a contract. If read further, at the time when he makes it, what does he make? He makes it means what? He makes a contract, comma, he is capable of understanding it. So that person is in a position of understanding the contract. That person is capable of understanding the contract and forming a rational judgment as to its effects upon his interests. Forming a rational judgment as to its effects upon its interest. So, to decide whether a person is of sound mind or not, two criteria are given. First of all, he must understand the contract, what the contract is. He must understand that. And is there a not or again? And forming rational judgment. Rational judgment is what? Normal, the person of normal prudence or a prudent man can form a rational judgment. So rational judgment is a judgment which can be formed by a normal human being as to its effects upon his interest. So what are the effects of that contract upon myself? I must understand them. Correct? So two criterias. First of all, a person must understand what is the contract. And second is he must understand what are the effects of that contract on my interest. Correct? To give you an example, to make it more clear, I will give you one example to make it more clear. I give you a proposal that you have to go on the terrace of a 20-storied building and jump from there. I will pay you 20 crore rupees, 1 crore per floor. 20 crore rupees if you jump from the terrace of the 20 floors building. Now you have understood the contract. So first criteria is satisfied. And forming a rational judgment, second criteria, as to its effects upon his interest. So what will be the effect of this contract on you? If you jump from 28th floor, you will not be alive. Okay? So you will say, no, sir, I don't want to enter into a contract. Correct? No? So you will not accept or you will not be ready to enter into a contract like this. But if you say, yes, I am ready to enter into a contract with you, sir, then you are a person of unsound mind. You are following me? So two criteria to decide whether a person is of sound mind. That person must be capable of understanding the contract, and the second criteria is forming a rational judgment as to its effects upon his interest. Correct? Now please read it. I'll share with you now the attendance link of today. Just give me a moment. Today is 16/9. The first link was for feedback. Okay. First link was for feedback. Now this is the attendance link for today. Have you received the link? Yes, Mitali. Have you received the link? You have raised hand, Mitali. What is that? Hmm. Yes, sir. Received. Link is received. Mitali, why have you raised the hand? Please answer. Any difficulty or any query? Mitali. Yes, sir. Okay. For receiving the link, you have raised the hand. Thanks a lot. No problem. So we were on soundness of mind. So let us read that definition again. A person is said to be of sound mind for the purpose of making a contract if at the time when he makes it, he is capable of understanding it and forming a rational judgment as to its effect upon his interest. Read further. A person who is usually of unsound mind. Now please read carefully. Person who is usually of unsound mind. So usually of unsound mind, but occasionally of sound mind. Occasionally. So on certain circumstances or or sometimes he is sound mind. May make a contract when he is of sound mind. So when the contract is to be made, when he is of sound mind. Read further. A person who is usually of usually of sound mind, but occasionally of unsound mind, may not make a contract when he is of unsound mind. So after reading these two sentences, what do you gather? You gather that a contract is to be entered into when a person is of sound mind. Is it correct? Please read those both the sentences. Let us read again. Very interesting sentences, but you have to read it carefully. A person who is usually of unsound mind, but occasionally of sound mind, may make a contract when he is of sound mind. A person who is usually of sound mind, but occasionally of unsound mind, may not make a contract when he is of unsound mind. So, in short, what do you mean by this? A person may make a contract when he is of sound mind, and when he is of unsound mind, he shall not make a contract. Just a minute. So when a person is of sound mind, then only he can make a contract or he shall make a contract. When he is of unsound mind, he may not make a contract. Okay, that is the meaning of these two sentences in short. Correct? Let us go to the next slide. Factors affecting soundness of mind. Factors affecting soundness of mind. So which are the factors which will affect the soundness of mind? So because of which factors a person will be of unsound mind or a person will become of unsound mind? One point number one, idiocy. You call it idiot, no idiot. An idiot is a permanently mentally deranged person. Hence, he is incapable of entering into contract. The word is permanently mentally deranged. Permanently, forever. So, complete mad. So, he does not have the capacity to enter into contract. Next is lunacy. It is mental disorder. Lunatic, you call it as. Lunatic. What do you call it as? Lunatic. Lunacy. It is mental disorder. Agreement by lunatic is void. When he is of sound mind, he can enter into a valid contract. So this person will have intervals of unsoundness of mind. So during that period, he cannot enter into contract. But when he is of sound mind, he can enter into a valid contract. And third person is drunkard, drunkenness. A person who is of unsound mind due to heavy consumption of alcohol is not competent to contract. So when he is under that kick, he is unsound mind person. So when next day he comes out of it, he becomes a person of sound mind. Okay. So it is 9:45 now. So if you have any difficulties, please ask me. Otherwise, we will wind up the lecture. So please fill up the feedback of syllabus form. That is very important. And please fill up today's attendance. I'll share the attendance link again for you. Attendance link is shared again. So please ask me difficulties with respect to the syllabus. So if you have no difficulties, we'll wind up the lecture. You have a lecture at 10 o'clock now, correct? So you can enjoy 15 minutes break, not 15 minutes, 13 minutes, 13, 12 minutes. Okay, so all the best and have a good day. So today is, thank you Siddesh. Today is Thursday, no? So next lecture will be on Tuesday. So we'll continue with the further things regarding soundness and unsoundness of mind. Okay. Till then, goodbye. Have a good day and all the best. Bye bye.